Hello Mayhem Makers, I'm Mindy with Quilting Mayhem and welcome to week 6 of the summer sampler. We're doing the framed in block because to me it looked framed in. Nothing super fancy this week. We're not doing flying geese or half square triangles, but we are going to do a simple 4-patch and then we're essentially going to turn it into kind of a square and a square, and I'll show you how that works. But we'll start out just with kind of your background fabric and one of your colors. You might not match mine, that's okay. Put them right sides together and you're just going to sew a 1/4 inch seam and press, and I'm going to take this machine, be right back, show you what it looks like. All right, so background and a color, 2 sets. Make sure when you line them up to make your 4-patch, they are opposing. You're going to put them right sides together, match this center seam, because people like having those centers match. And you don't have to press open like I do. You can press to one side or the other. If you do, it's always recommended press to the dark side as much as possible. So I would have pressed everything towards the yellow, away from the white, so that it wouldn't show kind of as a shadow underneath the yellow or under the white if you're pressing one way. Totally how I was taught in the beginning, so I know it's doable. I just happen to like nice flat open seams. If you're new, please pin this, what I call the stopping point, because I'm going to start at this end, I'm going to stop at this end, pin this so that it is nice and flat and even, keeps that square super square. And then when you start, just make sure that these 2 corners are nice and lined up so that your square is as square as it can be, and you don't get any waffliness, any kind of wonkiness in your block. That's definitely what starts to drive new sewists crazy. So this is what helps you keep them nice, square, and you don't run into issues as you keep going on. All right, so we're just going to do our 1/4 inch seam, press it open, and then we're going to start creating our square and a square. Be right back. All right, so this is just your basic 4-patch. All right, nice and pretty. Then what will happen is we have these triangles that we've cut, and we're going to sew them on, right? Because this is what's going to create our square and a square and make this 4-patch look like it's sitting on point, kind of on the diagonal. All right, so what I will end up doing first is I'm going to put this triangle and this triangle on first, and then I'll do these outer triangles. And I'm going to simply just fold it in half, give it just a little finger crease, and then match that crease that I made to that center and pin it. That way I'm making sure that this triangle, you know, this point is kind of following this line. It is as dead center as it can be. And then I'm going to repeat for the other side, just fold it in half, and then I'm just squeezing it, just giving it a little press. That way, we'll see if you can tell. Yep, see? So that's my matching point. You can also use a pin to mark that center, but for this purpose, this is pretty simple. And then once again, you're lining that crease where the seam is, pinning it so that it's going to stay nice and dead center with this line. I'm going to sew both these lines and then be right back. All right, so our unit should look like this, okay? If these little dog ears, you can chop them off. All they do is add a little bit of bulk that you don't need, and you can either use scissors or line up your ruler across this straight edge. Just cut those little guys off. They are not necessary in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so there we go. Dog ears be gone. And then we're just repeating our process. So we're going to flip them. I kind of like doing it with this way. So wrong sides together and folding the middle. That way the seam actually, or this crease, wants to lay kind of in there. Where when I was doing it the other way, then the crease was popping outward. This is where it's kind of wanting to sit right in there. And then lining it up with that seam down the middle. So I'll show you what I mean. So if I do them right sides together and make that, and then when I go to lay this down, it's kind of making a hill, right? Going upward. Where if you take it wrong sides together and do that crease, then when I lay it right sides together, it's making kind of a divot down into that seam. Not that it really makes a huge difference, but sometimes it's all the little things that kind of help you out. So, or like I said, you can always pin that center and then match also. But, so, take these to the machine and we'll have our square and a square. Be right back. All right, so this is what it looks like. So you have your kind of 4-patch on point with this outer square look. We're going to measure it and make sure it is the correct size. All right, this is very important. You want to make sure as you go along, everything's measuring the way they should. And this one's just a slight amount bigger than it should be. So here's what we're gonna do, all right? So I'm making sure that there's a little bit of fabric all the way around. I am trying to make sure that there is a 1/4 inch line at the tip of this 4-patch, because we don't want to lose our points as much as humanly possible. All right, so a little bit around. I actually have this diagonal line of my ruler. It's riding through the center of this 4-patch, so I know we're pretty good at where we need to be to this. Just trim off this slight overage that we have. And this is most commonly caused, at least when I sew, because I'm using a scant 1/4 inch seam. So my seams aren't quite a full 1/4, because I rather have them a little bigger than too small. And I prefer to trim versus have to figure out how to get everything to stretch back out where it belongs. That's never fun. All right, so as you can tell, it was just little bits. Little, what do I call schnibbles? Little schnibbles. Let those go. We have a nice square, the size it needs to be. All right, and this is just an 8.5 inch creative grid ruler that I have, because I don't do a lot of blocks bigger than that per se, so that's a good size. The next step is pretty easy. We're going to take the 2 long rectangular strips. One should be a background, one should be another color, whatever color you're using. And we're going to sew them 1/4 inch seam right sides together, press them so they look like that. All right, and then we're going to be to the point of sewing it all together. Let's lay it out. All right, so you have these guys. They should all match up, all be the same size. And then you have these that I call the cornerstones. Okay. Lay those out. And in a minute, I'm going to sew these 2 guys together so they all match. Now keep in mind, when you lay it out, this is what's going to be key. It's making sure this background piece is going against this block. Now you can play with it. If you flip it around and you decide you like having the darker fabric in, great. Do what you like for your block. But for this layout of what I did, I have the background towards this block and then the darker color on the outside. All right, and then what will happen is we'll do rows across and then put them together. So I'm going to sew 2 sets with these where there's a square on each end of this, and then I will have one of these on opposing sides of this block, and we'll put it together. So be right back. All right, so rows are done. Okay, make sure, keep laying them out, because I know I'm really good at accidentally getting something turned around, and I just keep sewing, and next thing I know, it's not the way it should be. So I always recommend, once you do your rows, lay them back out, make sure everything's laying the way it should, and then you can start laying right sides together and matching these seams right here, pinning them so they don't shift. And then making sure you sew with the corners matching at the beginning and the end. If you're new, feel free, pin them, match them, put pins in there so that things don't go crazy on you. And I'm also going to do the bottom side at the same time, because they're not really getting in each other's way. I prefer to do both these seams first and then go press. All right, so we're just going to pin, make sure everything fits. Watch my dog walk by. He loves his little cameos. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. So this seam, press, and be done. So be right back. All right, here we go. Yay, I love it. Makes me happy. So there's your framed in block. If you're having any problems, reach out, info@Quilting Mayhem. Come see us at the store, call the store, message us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. We're here to help. Definitely do not sit and struggle. Let us know. We'll help you out. We'll give you some other tips and tricks maybe. We can always video chat, those kinds of things. So hope you have fun. And until next week, keep on stitching.